Chief Engineer Vaelen prided himself on the silent dignity of his engine room. As a member of the venerable Elari technocracy, he viewed the manipulation of space-time not as a mechanical chore, but as a grand symphony of mathematical precision. The walls of the core room on the Luminary's Grace were paneled in polished pearl-white composite. Every diagnostic readout floated in a serene, pale-blue holographic matrix. The air was hyper-filtered, chilled to exactly 15 degrees, and smelled faintly of ozone and chilled antiseptic. Then, the primary containment manifold failed. The symphony vanished, replaced by the shrieking wail of a terminal resonance loop. The pale blue holograms flashed an angry, strobe-like crimson. "Report!" Vaelen demanded, his four delicate upper hands dancing across a console that was beginning to smoke and warp under the strain of a cascading feedback loop. "The subspace geometry is folding inward," his junior officer, a trembling young Elari named Tish, stammered. "The gravimetric dampeners are completely dead. We are dropping out of the slipstream in 6 minutes, Chief. When the field collapses, the shear forces will reduce the ship to its constituent atoms. Engage the auxiliary magnetic locks." "They aren't responding. The primary logic gate is fused. It needs a nanosecond precise calibration sequence to reset, but without it, the system simply won't respond. We can't talk to the machine, Chief." Valen's heart sank into his lower thorax. This was the tragedy of Elari design. It was beautiful and perfect, and it was entirely brittle. When a system designed with zero-tolerance margins failed, it did not degrade gracefully. It committed suicide. "May the ancestors guide our light," Vaelen whispered, staring at the main FTL housing. It was a massive sphere of polished chromium, seamless save for its viewports, now glowing a dull, lethal violet through them. "Hey, clear the track! Out of the way, coming through!" The booming, unrefined voice shattered Valen's stoic panic. Heavy, arrhythmic thuds echoed from the access lift. A moment later, Chief Petty Officer Jackson burst into the sterile sanctuary of the engine room. Jackson was a human. He was also a walking safety violation. He wore grease-stained canvas trousers, a faded gray shirt with the sleeves ripped off at the shoulders, and a heavy leather belt laden with archaic, non-holographic hand tools that clattered aggressively with every step. He was sweating buckets, leaving dark streaks across his pale skin where he had wiped his brow with grease-caked fingers. "What is the meaning of this intrusion, Specialist Jackson?" Vaelen snapped, his voice tight with aristocratic panic. "We are facing a catastrophic containment breach. Return to your structural deck and prepare for the end." "The hell I am," Jackson grunted. He dropped a heavy, battered plastic crate onto the pristine white floor deck. The impact left a sharp, black scuff mark on the pearl composite. Vaelen winced. "The main line is looping, right?" Jackson asked, chewing on a small wooden stick. He walked right up to the glowing chromium sphere, ignoring the radiation warnings flashing in 3 different galactic languages. "Do not approach the housing!" Tish cried out. "The hyperdimensional fluid is operating at 40,000 Vaelen of localized pressure. The logic gate is locked." Jackson's eyes flicked to the pressure gauge. He'd long ago set his wrist display to overlay Terran units on every reading in the room. The little amber figure hovering beside the gauge read just under 600,000 psi. Yeah, that'd turn you inside out. Jackson pulled the wrench from his belt and pressed the handle firmly against the casing, then leaned his ear against the other end. "Yeah, I can hear it," he said. "She's chattering. Sounds like a dry bearing in a tractor transmission. The intake valve is hung up on its own housing, isn't it?" "It is a variable geometry tachyon inductor," Vaelen said, his voice dripping with condescension despite the impending doom. It does not hang up. It is a solid-state crystalline matrix, governed by— "It's a stuck valve," Jackson interrupted. He turned the wrench in his hand. It was a heavy, drop-forged thing, its jaw cranked shut and locked tight so the solid back of the head could double as a hammer, the steel scarred from a working life of doing exactly that. Your fancy computer is firing control signals at a piece of metal, telling it to open, but the damn thing is jammed. It's not a math problem, Chief. It's a friction problem. "What are you doing with that primitive bludgeon?" Vaelen gasped as Jackson stepped over the safety barrier. "I'm going to persuade it," Jackson said. Before Vaelen could summon the security detail, the human raised the steel tool high above his head. With a guttural grunt, he swung it down with terrifying mammalian force. The sound was deafening. The impact rang through the entire structure of the dreadnought, vibrating right down into Vaelen's bone structure. The pristine chromium housing now sported a deep, jagged dent. "Insolent primate!" Vaelen shrieked, his antennae curling in absolute horror. "You have defaced a sacred instrument of the High Fleet! You have accelerated our demise!" "Hold your horses, forearms," Jackson said calmly, looking at the diagnostic screen. Vaelen peered into the container, expecting to see some manner of classified Earth technology. Perhaps a localized gravity generator or a pocket stasis field. Instead, he saw dozens of small, uniform rolls of a gray, fibrous material. It smelled faintly of chemical solvents and old glue. Jackson pulled out a roll, found the edge with his thumbnail, and ripped off a piece that set Vaelen's teeth on edge. "Is that paper?" Vaelen asked, his lower hands twitching. "Three-layer laminate," Jackson corrected him, already tearing off a second-long strip. "Polyethylene film on the outside, woven polyester mesh in the middle, rubber-based adhesive on the back. Duct tape, invented back on Earth during some forgotten war to keep moisture out of ammunition boxes. Turned out it fixes everything else, too." "You intend to silence a fluttering Class 4 tachyon inductor with sticky fabric?" Vaelen's voice reached a pitch usually reserved for mating calls. "The harmonic vibration will shred it in seconds. The thermal output will incinerate the adhesive." "The harmonic vibration will shred it if there's still a harmonic vibration," Jackson said. "That's the whole point. Pack enough lossy material around the housing, and it soaks up the energy that's driving the oscillation. The vibration's got nowhere to go, so it dies. No flutter, no resonance loop, no feedback. The tape doesn't fight the pressure. It just damps the valve until it stops shaking itself open." The human moved with a frantic, practiced efficiency that left Vaelen speechless. He didn't look at a single monitor. He didn't run a simulation. He simply began wrapping the gray fabric around the valve housing, layering it over and over. He pulled the tape tight, his thick forearms bulging, the tendons standing out like steel cables under his skin. Then the amber lights flared back toward red. "The valve," Tish started. "I know," Jackson barked. He slammed his free palm flat against the taped mass and leaned his full body weight into it, smothering the valve's shutter by force, while his other hand kept layering tape around the housing, around his own fingers, fusing them temporarily against the casing. The adhesive hissed against his skin. Jackson's jaw clenched, but he didn't stop. "He is fusing his hand to the housing! Ah!" Tish shrieked. "Just keep watching that pressure gauge." "Ugh!" Jackson grunted through his teeth. He peeled his hand free, leaving a ghost impression of gray tape across his palm, and kept wrapping, faster now. The strips overlapped sloppily but thickly, layer after layer after layer. The smell of hot adhesive mingled with the ozone in the air. The violet glow from the viewports was gone, buried under an ugly, bulbous mass of overlapping gray tape. "It's holding," Tish whispered, staring at his console in absolute disbelief. "The gravimetric pressure is stabilizing. The feedback loop it's flattening out. Chief, the logic gate is resetting." "That is impossible," Vaelen muttered, taking 3 steps toward the defiled engine. The harmonic frequency alone should have shredded the polymer bond. The thermal variance should have melted what remained. "Your problem was never the pressure," Jackson said, tossing the empty cardboard core into Vaelen's pristine white recycling bin. He patted the ugly gray lump with a heavy hand. It was resonance, a loose valve chattering itself open because nothing was telling it to stop. Back on Earth, sound engineers put tape on drumheads to kill unwanted overtones. Machinists wrapped tool handles to stop chatter. High gravity, corrosive oxygen atmosphere, rough terrain, badly maintained equipment. Stuff vibrates itself apart down there all the time. We figured out a long time ago that if something's shaking itself to pieces, you don't fight the shake. You absorb it. Wrap it in something soft and lossy, and let the energy bleed away as heat instead of motion. He shrugged. Your pressure stays exactly where it belongs. The valve just stops arguing about it. The engine room lights flickered, then returned to their serene, pale blue hue. The shrieking alarm died, leaving an eerie, profound silence in the room, broken only by the steady, rhythmic pulse of a perfectly balanced FTL core. Vaelen stared at the dented, tape-wrapped heart of his ship. It looked disgusting. It looked vulgar. It looked like an insult to 3,000 years of Elari engineering excellence. It was also working flawlessly. Jackson picked up his steel wrench, slipped it back into his leather belt, and hoisted the plastic crate back onto his shoulder. He looked at the 2 stunned aliens, his mouth curving into that strange, human expression of casual confidence. "She'll hold until we hit port," Jackson said, turning toward the lift. "Just don't touch it. And if anyone asks, tell them it's a custom Terran structural reinforcement matrix. Sounds more professional." "Jackson." The human paused, one hand on the doorframe of the lift, an eyebrow raised. Vaelen kept his eyes fixed on the readout panel, his upper hands clasped behind his back in the manner of Elari, who wished not to appear humbled. "Where does your crew store this Terran structural reinforcement matrix?" Jackson's grin widened. He set the crate back down and kicked it across the deck toward Vaelen's feet. "Keep that one," he said. "I've got more." He tapped the side of his head. "And Chief, next time your fancy computer can't talk to a stuck piece of metal, try talking to it yourself. Louder." The lift doors closed. Vaelen looked at the crate, then at the dented, taped-up triumph of human stubbornness. He let out a long, defeated sigh from his upper spiracles. "Tish?" "Yes, Chief?" "Input into the official maintenance log that the primary logic sequence was calibrated via kinetic persuasion, and that the spatial integrity was secured using a high-tensile Terran polymer matrix." He paused. "And then find out if the humans have a supplier. We are ordering 1,000 crates." That's our story for now. If you enjoyed it, let us know what you thought in the comments. And if you've got an idea for a story of your own, we want to hear that too. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.